The 1970s was an age of wonder and fear, a decade when humanity looked to the stars and saw both salvation and apocalypse. Science fiction exploded into art prophecy and rebellion all at once. But which of these cosmic visions truly stood the test of time, which dared to imagine futures that now feel eerily familiar? Let's journey through the 14 greatest sci-fi films of that bold era. Number 14. Solaris, 1972. When Andrei Tarkovsky released Solaris, it was hailed as the Soviet answer to 2001, A Space Odyssey, but its heart beat with something deeper and more human. The film opens not among stars, but swaying grass and rippling water, a dream of Earth that feels too real to be safe. At its core, Solaris tells of psychologist Chris Kelvin, who travels to a space station orbiting a mysterious ocean planet. There, he discovers that the ocean can materialize his memories, including his dead wife. What begins as scientific exploration turns into psychological collapse. Critics called it haunting, slow, and hypnotic. Others dismissed it as too philosophical. Censors in the Soviet Union were baffled. It wasn't anti-capitalist or pro-communist, it was anti-reality itself. Tarkovsky fought state committees that called his film decadent and unscientific. He refused to cut the emotional scenes, demanding that Solaris remain about the soul, not politics. Despite studio hostility, Solaris won the Grand Prix at Cannes and went on to inspire generations of filmmakers from Steven Soderbergh to Christopher Nolan. Today, its meditative pace feels prophetic in an age obsessed with screens and false memories. The film endures as a mirror to our own loneliness among the stars, a reminder that sometimes the final frontier is the human heart. Number 13. The Andromeda Strain, 1971. Before computers ruled our lives, one movie dared to show how technology could destroy us. The Andromeda Strain, based on Michael Crichton's novel, terrified audiences with its icy precision. This wasn't space opera. It was science as horror. The story begins when a satellite crashes in a New Mexico town, bringing with it a microscopic organism that kills every living thing. Scientists race to contain it in an underground lab built like a steel tomb. The film unfolds like a procedural thriller stripped of sentiment, every moment buzzing with dread. Universal Pictures feared audiences would find it too cold, too technical. But director Robert Wise insisted on realism. He hired real NASA consultants and designed computer interfaces that eerily predicted modern digital systems. Even the deadly microbe was created using photographic imagery from crystallized bacteria decades before CGI. Censors raised concerns over its depiction of government secrecy and germ warfare research during the Vietnam era, but Wise refused to dilute the script. His obsession with authenticity made the film unsettlingly believable. Over time, The Andromeda Strain became a cult classic studied in medical schools and referenced during real pandemics. Its legacy lives on every time a scientist faces the ethical line between discovery and destruction. It warned that mankind's curiosity could one day outpace its wisdom, a message that feels even sharper today. Number 12. Silent Running, 1972. Silent Running was born out of despair, of an age that had begun to lose faith in the Earth itself. Directed by Douglas Trumbull, the visual effects genius behind 2001, A Space Odyssey, the film tells the story of Freeman Lowell, a botanist aboard the Valley Forge, a space freighter carrying the last forests of a dead planet. When orders come to destroy the domes and return home, Lowell rebels. He kills his crew, releases the ship into deep space, and dedicates his life to protecting the final garden with only 3 maintenance drones for company. It was a box office disappointment. Critics didn't know what to make of a sci-fi movie with no aliens, no laser guns, only grief. Universal Pictures cut promotional support, fearing it was too mournful for mainstream audiences. But its haunting visuals and Joan Baez's sorrowful songs made it unforgettable to those who saw it. Behind the scenes, Trumbull fought studio executives who demanded a happier ending. He refused. Lowell's lonely fate, drifting through the cosmos with his plants, became one of cinema's most tragic images. Years later, Silent Running inspired generations of filmmakers, from George Lucas, who borrowed its droids, to Wall-E, which echoed its melancholy tone. Its message remains chillingly relevant. When humanity finally looks for home among the stars, will there still be a garden left to save? Number 11. Logan's Run, 1976. In an era obsessed with youth and pleasure, Logan's Run offered a glittering nightmare disguised as utopia. The movie imagined a city sealed beneath a dome where no one lived past 30. Every citizen was promised renewal, a euphemism for ritual death. Logan 5, played by Michael York, was a Sandman, an enforcer who hunted those who dared to escape their fate. But when he questions the system and flees with a woman named Jessica, the truth unravels. The idyllic city is a prison built on ignorance. Outside lies the forgotten ruins of the old world and the decaying statue of freedom itself. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer expected an adventure for teenagers, but director Michael Anderson delivered something darker, a vision of consumer paradise turned into social execution. The film's visual effects were cutting edge for the time, with holographic illusions and miniature domes that won an Academy Award. Yet controversy swirled. Religious groups condemned its depiction of ritualistic death, while censors questioned scenes of euthanasia and rebellion. MGM panicked over its budget, which ballooned to over $9 million, a fortune for a pre-Star Wars sci-fi film. Despite mixed reviews, Logan's Run became a cult obsession and inspired a short-lived television series. Today, it's recognized as a mirror of our own obsession with youth and image. It whispered a truth modern society still fears to face: that eternal youth comes at the cost of eternal denial. Number 10. Westworld, 1973. Before The Matrix, before Jurassic Park, there was Westworld, a film that predicted the rise of artificial intelligence and virtual violence. Written and directed by Michael Crichton, it introduced audiences to Delos, a theme park, where guests could live out fantasies in robotic worlds from the Roman Empire to the Wild West. Yul Brynner's Gunslinger, a humanoid android, was a mechanical nightmare hiding behind a polite cowboy grin. When the park's systems fail, the gunslinger goes rogue, hunting humans in cold silence. It was one of the first films to use digital imagery to portray the android's vision, a grainy, pixelated perspective that felt futuristic in the early 70s. Critics were divided. Some called it genius, others thought it too grim. MGM worried that showing technology turning on humanity would scare investors, as computers were just beginning to enter daily life. Still, Crichton refused to soften the story. He saw Westworld as a warning, a future where pleasure without consequence leads to moral collapse. Behind the scenes, Brynner's eerie performance terrified crew members who said he stayed in character even off-camera. The movie became a surprise box office hit and decades later inspired HBO's dark reimagining. Westworld's legacy endures as the film that first asked a terrifying question: what happens when the machines learn to enjoy the killing as much as we do? Number 9. The Man Who Fell to Earth, 1976. When Nicholas Roeg cast David Bowie as a stranded alien, he didn't just make a film, he created a hallucination. The Man Who Fell to Earth blurred science fiction with tragedy, art, and addiction. It told the story of Thomas Jerome Newton, a being who came to Earth seeking water for his dying planet. Instead, he was consumed by greed, technology, and human weakness. The movie became infamous for its surreal imagery and fragmented storytelling. Critics called it confusing, even disturbing. But Roeg insisted it wasn't about aliens at all, it was about us. About how even the most enlightened visitor would be corrupted by Earth's obsessions. During production, Bowie was battling exhaustion and the isolation of fame. Many claimed he wasn't acting at all. He was living Newton's despair. The studio panicked over his erratic behavior and cut entire scenes to make the narrative simpler. Still, the result was an emotional riddle of genius. Censors in several countries objected to its bleak portrayal of capitalism and spiritual decay. American distributors delayed its release, while British tabloids accused it of moral nihilism. Despite the uproar, it became a cult phenomenon. Today, The Man Who Fell to Earth feels eerily prophetic. Its warnings about media addiction, corporate control, and emotional disconnection echo louder than ever. Bowie's haunting eyes staring into emptiness remind us that sometimes the most alien thing in the universe is humanity itself. Number 8. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 1977. When Steven Spielberg released Close Encounters of the Third Kind, he wasn't chasing blockbuster glory, he was chasing wonder. This wasn't a story about invasion or destruction. It was about awe and faith in the unknown. The film follows Roy Neary, an ordinary power line worker whose life unravels after a mysterious encounter with a UFO. Drawn by visions of a strange mountain, he abandons his family and job to find the truth. The finale at Devil's Tower, where humans finally meet the visitors, remains one of the most breathtaking sequences in film history. At the time, Columbia Pictures was nearly bankrupt. Executives feared the movie's tone was too ambiguous and its ending too spiritual. Spielberg refused to compromise. He fought to keep the aliens peaceful, insisting that humanity needed hope after the cynicism of Watergate and Vietnam. Behind the scenes, chaos reigned, budgets ballooned, crews quit, and Spielberg clashed with studio accountants. Yet when the lights finally dimmed, audiences were silent, then overwhelmed. Critics called it the most emotionally human science fiction film ever made. Close Encounters reshaped the genre. It inspired decades of alien stories built not on fear, but fascination. And today, its message feels more powerful than ever. That belief in the unknown might just be the last thing keeping our species alive. Number 7. A Clockwork Orange, 1971. Few films have terrified and divided audiences like A Clockwork Orange. Stanley Kubrick's dystopian masterpiece painted a future ruled by violence control and psychological conditioning. Set in a grimy England drenched in neon and despair, it follows Alex DeLarge, a teenage delinquent, obsessed with classical music and cruelty. When he's captured and subjected to an experimental form of mind control, the film asks a chilling question. Can you remove evil without killing the soul? Upon release, critics were outraged. Religious leaders called it immoral, politicians demanded bans, and British censors nearly blocked its release. Kubrick's precise direction and Anthony Burgess's controversial source material sparked riots in London. The backlash grew so fierce that Kubrick himself withdrew the film from UK circulation for nearly 30 years. Behind the controversy was genius. Kubrick built entire futuristic sets using discarded furniture and fluorescent light tubes. Every frame pulsed with eerie perfection. Despite outrage, it received multiple Academy Award nominations and became one of the most debated works in film history. Today, A Clockwork Orange stands as a mirror of human control and manipulation. Its world of moral conditioning predicted modern debates about censorship and surveillance. It warns that when we try to program goodness, we may only manufacture a different kind of monster. Number 6. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1978. The original 50s classic terrified audiences with Cold War paranoia, but the 1978 remake turned that fear into existential art. Director Philip Kaufman's version relocated the story to San Francisco, where an alien organism replaces humans with emotionless duplicates. Donald Sutherland, Brooke Adams, and Leonard Nimoy lead a cast trapped in a city that can no longer feel. The movie's creeping dread builds until its unforgettable ending, a silent scream of pure hopelessness. Paramount executives doubted its potential. They wanted a simpler monster movie. Kaufman disagreed. He hired cinematographer Michael Chapman to shoot the city like a dream, turning flower shops and parks into alien landscapes. The result was a visual nightmare, cold, beautiful, and believable. Some critics called it too bleak. Others hailed it as one of the greatest remakes ever made. Its release sparked debates about conformity media hypnosis and government mistrust during the post-Watergate era. Behind the scenes, Sutherland reportedly stayed in character for weeks, rarely speaking to the crew. The eerie tone infected everyone. The final twist, a shocking gesture of betrayal, left audiences stunned in theaters. Invasion of the Body Snatchers endures as one of the most chilling portraits of human detachment. It whispered that the invasion had already happened, that we had surrendered our emotions long before the pods arrived. Number 5. Stalker, 1979. Few films are as hypnotic and haunting as Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker. A journey not through outer space, but through the desolate inner world of faith and despair. It tells the story of three men, the writer, the professor, and the stalker, who venture into the Forbidden Zone, a mysterious wasteland where a room is said to grant one's deepest desire. Shot in long, meditative takes and drenched in silence, Stalker was both a masterpiece and a nightmare to create. Filming took years in abandoned industrial sites where toxic chemicals reportedly poisoned the cast and crew. Tarkovsky himself grew ill during production. Soviet officials accused him of making a film too abstract for the people. But Tarkovsky refused to simplify it. He called it a prayer made of images. Censors tried to cut the film, labeling it dangerous and nihilistic. Its themes of blind faith and collapse of ideology struck too close to the Soviet nerve. The director fought for every frame and eventually smuggled his preferred version into European festivals. Critics who saw it were stunned. Stalker was no longer science fiction. It was spiritual philosophy disguised as a quest. Its slow pace and cryptic ending baffled audiences in the 70s, but decades later it inspired filmmakers like Christopher Nolan, Lars von Trier, and the creators of the video game Stalker. Today, Stalker stands as a monument to endurance and meaning. In its polluted rivers and endless tunnels, Tarkovsky left us a prophecy that even in a world stripped of faith, there will always be those who keep walking toward hope. Number 4. Alien, 1979. When Alien burst onto screens in 1979, it didn't just redefine science fiction, it redefined terror itself. Directed by Ridley Scott and written by Dan O'Bannon, it fused futuristic technology with primal fear. The tagline still echoes through cinema history. In space, no one can hear you scream. The story begins aboard the commercial ship Nostromo, where a crew of miners discovers an alien organism that infiltrates their vessel. One by one, the creature hunts them with nightmarish precision until only Ellen Ripley remains. Her fight for survival turned Sigourney Weaver into a new kind of cinematic hero. 20th Century Fox executives were horrified by early screenings, calling it too gruesome, too slow, too dark. But Scott refused to change his vision. The creature's life cycle, designed by Swiss artist H.R. Geiger, terrified even the studio staff, who claimed it looked too real to watch. During filming, the set was so claustrophobic that actors fainted inside their suits. The iconic chestburster scene shocked everyone, including the cast, who weren't told when the blood would spray. Their screams were genuine. Critics at first dismissed the film as another B-movie, but audiences couldn't look away. Alien became an international phenomenon, spawning sequels, comics, and a new language of cinematic horror. Its blend of cold machinery and human fragility created an aesthetic that still defines sci-fi today. It wasn't just a film about survival. It was about the cost of exploration and the fear that our greatest discoveries may turn on us. Number 3. Soylent Green, 1973. Soylent Green wasn't subtle. It was a scream from the future. Set in a suffocating world of overpopulation, pollution, and social decay, the film painted 1973's anxieties in shades of apocalypse. Charlton Heston played Detective Thorne, a weary cop investigating the murder of a corporate official. What he uncovers is horrifying, a dystopia where people survive on a mysterious food product called Soylent Green. The film's final revelation? Its shocking secret ingredient became one of the most iconic twists in movie history. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer expected a modest thriller, but director Richard Fleischer turned it into social prophecy. Its grim depiction of climate collapse and government corruption mirrored real headlines of the 70s energy crisis. Some theaters even refused to show it, claiming it was too depressing for audiences already facing economic panic. Behind the scenes, the atmosphere was heavy. Legendary actor Edward G. Robinson delivered his final performance knowing he was dying. His farewell scene, where he chooses euthanasia, became heartbreakingly real. He passed away just days after filming wrapped. Critics initially dismissed Soylent Green as pulp fiction, but over time, it grew into a haunting masterpiece. It foresaw corporate monopolies, climate doom, and humanity's moral erosion. In an age of environmental crisis, its warning feels painfully close. The film's final cry, Soylent Green is people, still echoes as one of cinema's darkest truths. It reminds us that our hunger for progress may one day consume us all. Number 2. Star Wars, 1977. When Star Wars premiered in 1977, no one, not even George Lucas himself, understood what had just been unleashed. At the time, science fiction was grim and cerebral. Studios wanted no part of space fantasy. Universal and United Artists both rejected it. But Lucas persisted, building an entire universe from scraps of myth and imagination. From its first blast of John Williams' score to the Star Destroyer stretching across the screen, the film changed cinema forever. It told the timeless story of a young dreamer, Luke Skywalker, rising from desert obscurity to face an evil empire. But beneath the adventure lay something ancient, a tale of destiny, faith, and rebellion. The production was chaos. Sets collapsed in the Tunisian desert. The crew laughed at the dialogue. Fox executives nearly pulled funding. Lucas had panic attacks and lost weight under the pressure. Yet when the lights dimmed at the first screening, the audience erupted. They had never seen anything like it. Censors had no quarrel this time, but critics did. Some dismissed it as a children's fantasy. Others sensed it was myth reborn. Within months, it became a global phenomenon, inspiring toys books, religions, and generations of dreamers. Star Wars wasn't merely entertainment. It was resurrection. It revived cinema's capacity for wonder. It reminded a weary world that even in darkness, there could be hope and heroism. Decades later, its legacy remains unmatched. The Force, as Lucas imagined, was never about power. It was about belief. Number 1, 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968, re-released through the 1970s. Though technically born in the late 60s, 2001 became the defining vision of the 70s, returning in countless re-releases that turned it into a cultural rite of passage. Stanley Kubrick's Odyssey through time, consciousness, and evolution was unlike anything ever filmed. It wasn't just science fiction, it was cinematic scripture. The film follows humanity's journey from primitive ape to cosmic traveler, guided by the mysterious black monolith. Its climax, through the infinite corridor of color, remains one of the most astonishing sequences ever captured on film. When it debuted, audiences were divided. Some walked out baffled, others knelt before the screen in awe. Critics accused it of pretentiousness, but young people flocked to it, embracing it as a psychedelic experience. Kubrick refused to explain its meaning, insisting that mystery itself was the message. Behind the scenes, production stretched for years. Kubrick demanded absolute realism, designing space stations before NASA even built them. The special effects so advanced they won a unique Oscar, remain unmatched in their tactile beauty. Arthur C. Clarke's collaboration added philosophy to spectacle, transforming it into meditation. By the mid-1970s, 2001 had evolved into legend. It was screened at midnight theaters across America where audiences watched in silence and left changed. Its imagery influenced every major filmmaker that followed, from Spielberg to Nolan. Today, it stands as the cathedral of science fiction, not just a story of space, but of consciousness itself. It asked where humanity came from, and dared to ask where it might be going. The 1970s gave us more than movies. They gave us visions. They warned, dreamed, and questioned in equal measure. These 14 films still burn bright because they looked past spectacle and into the human condition. So which one still speaks to your imagination? Which future do you fear or desire? Hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below.